Hello, Nate Bailey here with the Life Outdoors. I just thought I tried to come on here live before and it wasn't working out, so I'm trying to do it now. I would really like to help you guys this year with your elk hunting. We've drawn some tags this year, so we're not going to be hunting some of the Cascade stuff that we were hunting before. This video is awful choppy. I'm hoping that it gets better, but anyhow, there's some tactics you have to have when you go out elk hunting, and especially when you're talking, like the Cascades and the stuff that I live in. Um, the biggest thing that for the Cascades, especially, and I think for a lot of different places where there aren't big populations of elk, and that is the biggest one of the biggest things, and if not the biggest, is to hunt elk where they are. You have to be where the elk are. I've spent way too much time and effort going in, hiking in, 4 miles, putting a camp together, and then having no elk around. And Cascade elk, especially nowadays with the wolves, Cascade elk move all over the place. So you really can't do that. You have to stay mobile and be mobile. I spent a lot of time. You'd go in, set up your camp, and then you just hunt every little pocket, every little spot that you think that an elk might be in. And I'll tell you what, if the elk are in the general area, you're going to pick up on where they're at. So if they're not there, that means you got to move. So moving is not a bad thing. The next tip is, and if you guys have any questions, come on here and you guys could ask me questions, and I'll see them in the bottom here, and I'll try to help where I can. But the next tip I could give you is learn how to bugle. Okay, I got a question here from Skookum69. Will you start locating bugle right away, or start with a few cow calls and then step it up, then try bugling? Okay, so I personally go and I will bugle my head off from day one. And there's times, though, when I have used cow calls to try to get a response, and I'll use my bugle tube with a cow call to get it out there further. Skookum says, especially in early season. Yeah, so early season, man, I've had some elk just going crazy early season. There's a video of ours with Gage in 2021, I think it was, where he had a bull bugling at him and just tearing up trees up ahead of him. And so he bugled at that bull from opening day forward, and especially this year because opening day is going to be a week later. So I would definitely be bugling this year. That would be, and every year I bugle. There are times, though, okay, and I'll put this out there. There are times, though, when they will not answer your bugle. Early on, and it all depends on the elk dynamics of what's going on at that spot in the woods at that time. So we've had great success bugling, and then we've had some mediocre success. I will tell you this: last two bulls I've called and killed for myself, those two were called in with cow call, and they never even responded. They didn't bugle back. I just heard them raking, and they came through the woods as I was going. So that's probably one of the biggest things, though, is knowing how to locate call is just as important too. You can't just want to do what you want to do. You got to do what the terrain dictates. And I'll tell you this, another thing too is, and I know the elk usually aren't in the bedding areas until say 10 o'clock when the Cole's back there. Say 10 o'clock when everything shifts, when the wind shifts. I realize that the bulls aren't back up in their bedding areas, but I'll go up there and take a nap until the bulls get in there. So when I bugle, I'm bugling on top of the ridges. And in the Cascades, that's a huge thing, because a lot of these ridges and valleys are pretty, you're talking thousands of feet, and the sound doesn't carry very well. If I'm on private timber, are there any other hunters, will you still be aggressive with bugles and use more aggressive bugling up in the national forest? Yes, I do. All of my bugling is very aggressive, and I hunt in the national forest a lot. I don't hunt a ton of private timber. I just like wilderness. I like no roads, so I hunt a lot of places that have very minimal or low roads. One thing about getting aggressive early, especially if there's a lot of people around, is you gotta take stock in what's going on around you. Yeah, you're welcome, man. You're welcome. take stock in what's around you. If there's a lot of people around, there's times when I will listen to the other people bugle and see if there's any elk responding. And I don't have to hear elk bugling back. You could tell when elk are responding to bugles. They'll do things differently. You could see it in the sign. If people are starting to bugle a lot and you see a lot more rubs, you know that that's affecting the bulls. So that's something that I would put in my quiver and think about and use down the road. Um, another trick that I use, and one of the big things is, it's not so much making the best bugle sounds. It's actually knowing when to make the bugle sounds and when to be aggressive and when not to be aggressive and how to be aggressive and how to use the wind. You know, big bulls use the wind for everything. They're using the wind to check to see if there's a cow with you that's worthwhile. Back in the day when we could use elk pee, I used to spray. If I knew I had a bull coming and he was going to check me, I'd spray that stuff everywhere. And I'm telling you what, there's more times than not, that's what got him going. I've actually sprayed elk pee on wallows and seen them go in the next day and just tear them up where there's mud in the trees and everything else. So aggressive, these bulls already, so even right now, the bulls already are starting to feel it. They know the rut's coming. You know, with the way that the sun is going down quicker in the evenings, these animals are starting to feel it. Here pretty quick, you'll see, like my goats, I'll watch my goats too, and here pretty quick, you'll see them start putting on more and more hair, and the elk are starting to put on more hair, and it's that time of year. That's what gets them going, I believe. So, like I was saying, I will be very aggressive early on. Especially, I don't want to say that. I guess what I should say is, if the bull's going to be aggressive, I'm going to be aggressive with him. That is something that is a normal thing for me to do. So each situation's different. I mean, towards the end of the year, sometimes I'm not as aggressive as I am towards the beginning. It all depends on the situation. We were real aggressive. You guys could probably see that. I think it was 2019. You guys could see where I was calling for Gage and his buddy was filming, and we had these two little spikes, and I was running them all over the place, calling aggressively and moving. I was moving back and forth, trying to get them to come across Gage, and all I essentially was doing, make them run in front of Gage. Okay, Jay Carey says, I've always noticed the same thing with horses: sunlight change and their hair coat change and behavior change all in hand. Yeah, I believe that. And the temp doesn't matter. Like you said, the temperature doesn't matter. I'm a firm believer in that. I believe, you know, I could sit and watch my goats and I could see how they're responding to what's going on. And for that day, like I know, like during deer season, if my goats were laying down and not wanting to get out of the barn, I knew I wasn't going to see a deer. But if my goats were up and making a lot of noise, then I was like, oh, I better get out there, because the deer are going to be doing the same thing. They're going to get out and they're going to be more active. So it is one of those things. You know, here's something that I can offer to. This is probably the best thing I could offer to people that haven't done a lot of bull hunting, that haven't got into a ton of bulls, and just start getting around animals. And I mean animals that have, you know, several stomachs and eat, and like goats and deer and any of those kind of animals, and just start realizing how things change during their daily habits, what changes their daily habits. And it'll make you such a better elk hunter. It'll make you way better, because now you'll start to understand what's going on when you're interacting with that elk. I don't know how many of you guys have worked with cows. Cows, man, I'm telling you, a lot of the stuff that you get around, a lot of the stuff will change the way the animal's behaving. And it does the same thing to the animals out here. Let me see. Corey, you guys hunting the same old stomping grounds, or did you? We drew tags this year, but we've hunted it before. And we typically try to hunt that ground whenever we can. That's why I will never draw a big bull tag like in Mount Emily or anything like that, is because I use all my points in this unit. Now we're planning I got a couple other hunts of guys that I'm going to help with. Gage may not be able to do as much, and Chase may not be able to do as much just because of their schedule. But I got time to do a lot more, so I'm probably going to be helping some people. So you may see some of our old stomping grounds. I have some new areas picked out in the Cascades because my stomping grounds last year got overran with people. So I'm looking for some different places in the Cascades. Not only that, it's fun to change things up, right? Um, so the biggest thing is for me is the adventure of hunting. I mean, yeah, really, we want a lot of meat this year. It's just that we want to fill our freezers too. So my unit is any elk, so I'm going to shoot the first legal elk, unless it's small. The first legal elk that I come across that I could shoot. If that's a cow, it's a cow. I'm going to get a cow this year because I want the meat. Skookum says, how do you manage the meat in the early season when it's hot? You have a big pack, or do you make several trips? I make several trips, and what I do to manage the heat is usually where I'm hunting elk, unless I'm clear up on, there's places up on top on some ridges that aren't around water, but there's a reason elk, especially in the heat, are where they're at. And that reason usually is because it's cool. So I have not had any problem with meat spoiling when I've been elk hunting at all. Even like in August. So the last two bulls I've killed were in September 6th, both on the 6th. That's crazy, huh? And one of them was right next to a creek, so we just hung it in the creek, hung it next to the creek, where if you find a creek and you find shade, man, that meat's going to be so good by the time you get it out of there. And then the last one I killed on the 6th was, I packed it all out that day. So I shot that thing like at 9, and I think I ended up getting the last load out probably about 10 that night. So yeah, you have to be careful with the meat, but one of the biggest things is find, if you don't have any water around, where it holds that cool air down, a nice watered creek bed will hold that air down, and it'll keep you nice and cool, and keep your meat nice and cool. If you don't have that, the elk are bedding for a reason in a spot. They're not going to bed where it's warm. So figure out why they're bedding there. Usually it's a really nice uphill, and that uphill is really nice and cool in the afternoon. So that's where I'll find and put my meat. As long as you get that, the biggest thing is after the shot is getting to the bull and getting him in pieces. That's a huge thing. There have been times, though, I must say, that I've taken and I've split the hams right down the middle, and then I take a little stick right on the inside seam of the ham, and I'll take and down to the bone, and I'll take a stick and I'll hold that open, and that way all that heat will dissipate out of the bone, because bone sour happens sometimes, even if you do the best you could do otherwise. But make sure that you get that meat cooled down, especially if you got that big old bull just pumping. That's a huge thing, because the minute that he comes in, he's already got a lot of adrenaline rushing, and all of his blood is pumping, and he's probably a lot hotter than he would be if he wasn't out screaming at you or when you were picking a fight at him. So that's one of the big things about taking care of meat. One of the other things that I would like to bring out and point out is get to know your calls. And what I mean by that is be able to make a bunch of different elk noises. Just listen to real elk. Go out or listen to real elk, or go on YouTube and watch elk hunting. Now, don't pay attention too much to the calling. There's a hornet here. Don't pay too much attention to the calling of the guys hunting. I wouldn't worry as much about that as I would listen to the elk. Elk will tell you what they want, and when they're just being nonchalant or moving away from you, if you consistently get elk to move away from you, start getting above them and call above them, and then move with them. Eventually they're going to stop. What's happening is a lot of people think that they're pushing that bull, and they're not. What's happening is the cow's like, I'm not ready to breed, so I'm going to go bed down, and all the other cows and the little bulls are going to follow, and so the big bull is going to follow too. So you just follow them until they lay down. Once they lay down, it's pretty, that bull, a lot of times, if there's a cow in heat, for sure, he won't lay down. He'll be up and around and checking everybody, and they just turn into real idiots. But he'll be smelling everybody, and so that's a good time of day to go in and call him out of there. Especially, I like midday because that's when your best winds are, right? Nothing's going to shift on you, unless you get clouds. Clouds come over sometimes and shift my winds. Sometimes, you know, you get a thunderstorm or something like that, but 90% of the time on those real good elk hunting days, the winds are going to stay constant in the middle of the day. They don't shift in the middle of the day. They do in the mornings and the evenings, and everybody's usually back in bed or eating something when the elk are actually really moving a lot. Yeah, these guys been down to the creek, and oh my gosh, now he's shaking on me. They've been down to the creek. Hey, go. And anyhow, it's fun to bring them down here and let them get a little bit of walking and stuff in today. So any more questions? If you guys have any more questions, I'm going to come back on here. I think I'll do this like every Sunday evening until the season, just to answer some questions and maybe even talk a little bit about what drives me to get into the woods, and when I'm in the woods, how I look at that, the philosophy behind it. Would that be something that you guys are interested in? It's faith-based. I'll tell you right now, I'm a Christian, and I believe in what goes on up in the woods speaks volumes. Do you get out late at night and locate and listen for night bugling? I don't in the Cascades, and the reason is for that is we're usually camping where the bulls are going to be, or we're camping somewhere, and I just there's a lot of walking involved when you're up in the Cascades in the dark. And no, I don't in the Cascades, because when I hunt the Cascades, though, you got to consider I'm hunting wilderness mostly. Now, when I'm hunting east, yes, I will night bugle. One thing I'll tell you: do not use artificial light. Do not have a weapon with you. Maybe a pistol, just in case you run across something that wants to eat you. But that would be easy enough to say, hey, you know, I have this just in case somebody wants to eat me. But I would most definitely be careful when you're out night bugling, because then you're leaving it all up to the officer on whether or not you were hunting. So just word of caution. Now, with that said, I have done night bugling, and I have come across officers before, and they knew exactly what I was doing, and they knew I wasn't out hunting. So that's a good thing you can do. Now, a lot of where we hunt over in east, we don't have to. We got that place kind of figured out pretty well. So we just put a lot of miles on. Over east, you could walk 15 miles and it doesn't hurt where we hunt. Now I know like Snake River and some of that is pretty good, but if I could pick 3 quick points for dealing with high pressure units, what would they be? Aside from being more athletic than the other guys, and going super deep. Okay, so that's a good question, because one of the units we hunt before it went to draw was absolutely crazy. The first thing that I would do is I would understand elk behavior, understand what their bugles mean, okay, or understand what their cow calls mean, because a lot of guys in pressure areas don't understand that, and they're just going to push elk around. The big thing is you can use that to your advantage too. Look for roadless areas, and I'm not talking about 5 miles in. Go on your maps, go where people are hunting elk a lot, and then look where there's no roads in that area and it's deeper and darker in there. That would be one of my quickest tips, is to try to find where they push the elk to. Elk will still talk, even under pressure. They still talk. And the reason I say this is because I've called in so many elk that have arrows in them. I hate to say that, but it's true. So you know that they're seeing pressure if they got an arrow in them, and they bugled at me coming in, and they still thought I was a bull. So that's another thing, is make yourself sound really believable. One thing you cannot do, and too many people are doing this in the elk woods, is pretending like they're bugling, and then they set up and they're like, well, I'm going to call this elk in. That's not how it works. Elk follow each other around. The herd's moving all the time, and when the herd moves, it's usually the cows taking them along. It's not the bulls. And so if you're gonna get out there and be part of that herd, you got to shadow and pretend like you're one of the bulls within the herd. So if you're not, a herd bull, you're going to be around the herd and you're going to be shadowing the herd and you're going to be bugling. And eventually, I don't know if you guys have ever watched any of our videos, but eventually that big old bull is going to figure out that you're not giving up, that you're still trying to get in on him and you're trying to steal his herd. Another thing that you got to understand is if there's babies around in elk country, they're still going into the rut. So don't get so discouraged that you, in high pressure areas, don't get so discouraged that you're like, man, there's no elk in here. Gage and I, in one of our units, we've called in, I don't know how many pickups. We've, nowadays we just walk the other way. We try to get rid of them. But we've also called in bulls, had pickups drive by, and we shut up, and hopefully the bull doesn't pipe off like guys in the back with the camo on, and and they're driving around with the aeronaut, that kind of stuff. And these guys will come through, and we'll be sitting there, and we're camoed up, and we're under a tree up on the ridge trying to make our way to a bull, and we've seen them drive right by. As they get past us and we can't hear them anymore, then we'll pipe up and start again. If you sound like a bull and you act like a bull and you act like elk, they're going to continue to respond. Even around high pressure areas of wolves, they still respond. They respond different. A lot of times in high pressure areas, I've had bulls to where they won't do anything with me until I start raking trees, or I start making tons of noise, because people for some reason think that when you bugle, you got to sneak around. You do not sneak around. You sound like an elk. And another thing is, you keep trying to dog that bull. Try to get underneath him to where you can get his wind. Now, I know you're not going to be able to smell him, but that's what bulls do to each other. So if you're acting like another bull, you're winning the game. My thoughts on using a decoy. I've tried it. Man, I don't know. I've not had any. I've had mixed reviews. Matter of fact, on antelope, I made antelope run all over the place with the decoy. The heads up decoy I really like. It's just a head, because you can use that thing, and I've never been busted and then brought out the decoy. I know that turkey decoys don't work on those cows are coming back down here. But I know for sure that turkey decoys don't work on elk. I have a friend of mine who waved a turkey decoy at a bunch of elk, and they did not like that. Yeah, I would give it a shot a lot more. I just haven't done a lot of it, and I'll tell you why. Is because we hunt. We're so aggressive that a lot of times we're moving forward until we get a shot, and we just don't have time to put the decoy up. That's a lot of it. I will say this: in a high pressure area, be careful. You'll see me in videos with the decoy on my back, and those weren't high pressure areas. We were the only people in there. So, but I would definitely be careful. Give it a shot. It'd be super fun. Back to high pressure areas though. I'd like to kind of jump on this, because it's getting more and more like that. They're looking at those cows down there. Anyhow, it's getting more and more like that. And yeah, I really believe that elk are killable in high pressure areas. I think one of the other things is always check the bulls. I mean, so if you have bulls that aren't bugling and there's bulls in there, go find one that's bugling. The hotter the bull, the faster it's going to come in, and the less time you got to worry about somebody else picking up on it. That's one of my biggest tips. And I'll walk around and listen. And then if there's other guys in the unit, I'll walk ridge lines and listen to them bugle. And as they bugle, I'll listen for the elk response. If the elk are moving away from the guys that are bugling, a lot of times guys won't follow them. So you don't even have to let them know that you're bugling, that you're up there. You just keep following where the elk are going. You don't follow the bugles, don't follow the guys, just follow the elk. I've done this several times, and guys just give up. They're like, man, I scared that bull off. And you're not going to scare a bull off, not with bugles. They're just going to go away. The only time that they get scared off is if they smell you. So that's kind of my little elk tips. I'm going to keep doing this. I like the Q&A stuff, because a lot of the questions you guys brought up are really good, and I may do podcast with those questions, which is kind of what I want to do this for, is we could get out and help people. And the reason what brought this on is everybody tells me quit making videos, quit trying to help people elk hunt. People are getting too good at it, and I get what they're saying. Okay, I get it, But what's worse than having guys that know what they're doing in the woods? And there's going to be a lot of guys, right? Um, well, I would say um, guys that don't know what they're doing are way worse out in the woods. They screw up more hunts. Guys that know what they're doing are going to back off when they know that that bull's going to come into the other guy. Guys that, I mean, it's just the way it is. And so if I could promote that, that's what we want to do here. So, um, oh, thanks for thanks for the compliment. We're going to hunt the Cascades this year. You're not going to see some of the same stuff you've seen out of me. We got some spots, and I know there's some elk running around up there. And I don't have a tag for the Cascades, but I'm going to help this year. I'm going to help several guys. So, Cascade bulls, there's nothing like them. I'll tell you what, I'm almost messed up about not having, or getting that tag, because I really want to hunt the Cascades, but, there's a lot more elk where we're going. But it's not the Cascades, and there's not those big old monster bulls that live in the Cascades. You know, you shoot a 300-inch bull in the Cascades, that's like a 360-inch bull anywhere else. I'm just, it's the way it is, because those things have been living for so long, and there's tons of them up there if a guy's willing to put the work in. Another thing is I'm not getting any younger, so I want to do all, like the unit that I'm hunting this year, I can hunt that clear into my 80s probably. But this unit, man, there's a place that for sure next year I'm going that you're not going to be able to hunt that thing. It's going to be tough to hunt it because it's a long ways in and it's steep to get in there, and it's nasty once you're in there. So, but the elk are there, so I really want to get after it. So anyhow, thanks a bunch, guys. This was fun. You guys, I'll come back on here next week at about the same time. And I'll put an announcement out so you guys can know that that's what's going on. And then if you guys want to meet me back here, that'd be great. Think of some other questions, and I'll field your questions. Maybe we should start throwing in a Life Outdoors hat for the most questions or something like that. We got new ones, by the way. This is the old one, but we have new ones that have an elk on them. I actually like this one too. But anyhow, thanks a bunch, you guys. Really appreciate all of the feedback, and that was fun. We'll talk to you later. If you haven't got after it yet, you need to get out. Make sure your cameras are up. Make sure you're checking your spots, because it's on. I'm telling you, we're in August. It's on. All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you later.